Although they weren't that well received at the time of release, Robert Downey Jr.'s Sherlock Holmes movies have held up very well. Not only are they consistently entertaining to watch and feature one of my favorite performances from Downey Jr., but in comparison to the BBC's show, there are several interesting decisions and revised plotlines that were perhaps taken for granted at the time. While the franchise has been seemingly left in the dust with no updates on Sherlock Holmes 3, Guy Ritchie's two movies are the adaptations that I keep returning to time and time again. Sherlock Holmes has undergone a strong critical re-evaluation in recent years, with many people who initially didn't like the film learning to appreciate it for its bravery and bold storytelling. It's always risky to take liberties when adapting a character that's been around for so long, but the stylish quirks of Ritchie's movies are what has allowed them to remain so rewatchable, whereas the BBC show hasn't quite given me that same kick following its initial acclaim. While it's almost a relief that Sherlock might not come back, a third installment in Ritchie's series could still succeed. RDJ's Sherlock Holmes movies have aged very well. The initial criticisms don't all hold up anymore. Although they have their flaws, the truth is that Downey Jr.'s cinematic adaptations of the Sherlock Holmes character have stood the test of time. From their dynamic action sequences to the period piece filmmaking, the films took several risks that audiences criticized at first, but it's now exactly what distinguishes them from the crowd. Sherlock is one of the most frequently adapted fictional characters of all time, so filmmakers have to make some kind of statement that sets their work apart from the rest. Guy Ritchie did exactly that, paid the price at the time, and now benefits from it. Downey Jr. was an unorthodox choice to play the world's greatest detective, but his performance is truly the saving grace of those adaptations. He's so different from any other actor that's ever tackled the character, blending a unique amalgamation of humor and wit into the story that's very unlike the figure that Conan Doyle originally wrote. That was a major criticism at the time, but now that I'm more adjusted to seeing so many on-screen Sherlocks, it's refreshing to watch one with such quirks. The decision to bring Ritchie back for Amazon's Young Sherlock series proves he was doing something right. BBC's Sherlock started great, but lost itself along the way. The final season was somewhat underwhelming. Conversely, BBC's Sherlock went through the complete opposite trajectory. What started off as a very well-written and compelling drama about a talented detective in modern-day London ultimately got tangled in its own narrative complexities and drifted too far away from what audiences wanted. While there were some great episodes in the final season, I'll defend The Final Problem for as long as necessary. The overall product was overwritten and messy in ways that earlier seasons had managed to avoid. From here, it was easy to lose interest in what the show was going for. BBC's show covered most of the best Sherlock Holmes stories in the first few seasons, from The Hounds of Baskerville to A Scandal in Belgravia, but the later seasons got too caught up in the character arcs and relationships and forgot to focus on the individual stories, which is what Ritchie's movies did so effectively. While both projects were great for different reasons, the way that BBC's Sherlock stumbled at the last hurdle was fairly damaging to its reputation today. The Sherlock Holmes movies and Sherlock series were both important. Neither could be truly successful without the other. Robert Downey Jr. and Benedict Cumberbatch as Sherlock, custom image by Debanjana Chowdhury. Ultimately, both the BBC's Sherlock and Guy Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes were absolutely crucial in exposing audiences to the beloved character for the first time. Everybody has heard of Arthur Conan Doyle's detective, but without these two projects, it's unlikely that most people would have checked out the stories for themselves. While Ritchie's movies came first chronologically, it was BBC's Sherlock that gathered the larger fanbase and had a wider impact on pop culture, so they both deserve their flowers for continuing the love of Sherlock Holmes into the 21st century. Since these movies and television show both ended, even more Sherlock Holmes projects have entered development, and there will undoubtedly be more in the future. The character has become one of the most reliable independent properties, with audiences flocking to see new iterations of these stories with modern twists and bold changes. Neither of these projects could have been as successful without the other. BBC's Sherlock never could have happened with Ritchie's Sherlock Holmes movies paving the way, and Ritchie's movies never would have undergone such critical re-evaluation without the BBC show's success.